My name is Cassandra, and at 26 years old, I never expected to expose my mother at our annual family BBQ. Grandpa and I have always been close, so when he innocently asked, "Still loving the car, I got you," I froze. Before I could respond, Mom jumped in with a practiced smile and an elaborate lie about how grateful I was. In that moment, I made a decision that would change our family forever. I pulled out my phone and played the recording. If you are watching this video, drop a comment telling me where you are from. Hit that like button and subscribe to hear how I caught my own mother stealing from my grandfather. Grandpa Joe's backyard has always been my favorite place in the world. His sprawling property in rural Pennsylvania features a massive deck overlooking 3 acres of perfectly maintained lawn with colorful flower beds lining the perimeter and a fire pit surrounded by Adirondack chairs in the far corner. Every summer since I was a little girl, our entire extended family gathers there for the annual 4th of July BBQ. It has become such a tradition that relatives from as far as California and Florida book their flights months in advance to make sure they never miss it. This particular year, the weather had blessed us with clear blue skies and a gentle breeze that carried the mouth-watering aroma of Grandpa's famous smoked brisket across the yard. American flags decorated the railings and red, white, and blue streamers hung from the pergola covering the outdoor dining area. Picnic tables covered with checkered tablecloths dotted the lawn already laden with potluck dishes brought by various family members. As I arrived, I could see that most of the family was already there. My parents David and Karen were helping Grandpa with the grill. My younger brother Tyler was tossing a football with our cousins near the oak tree. Aunt Betsy and Uncle Greg were setting up the drinks table while their teenage daughters Madison and Paige were taking selfies by the flower garden. Even my reclusive Uncle Frank had made an appearance this year, sitting in a lawn chair, nursing a beer and watching the activities with a small smile. Grandpa Joe had been more than just a grandfather to me. After my grandmother passed away when I was 10, he poured all his love into his grandchildren, but especially me. We shared the same birthday, and he always said that made us kindred spirits. Every summer, he would take me fishing at the lake behind his property, teaching me patience and the value of quiet contemplation. During the school year, he never missed a single one of my volleyball games, cheering louder than anyone else in the bleachers. When I graduated high school as valedictorian, the gold watch he gave me remained my most treasured possession. The past few years had been tough for me financially. After graduating college with a degree in environmental science, I struggled to find work in my field. Student loans piled up, and my entry-level job at the county water treatment facility barely covered my rent and living expenses. My 15-year-old Honda Civic had finally died after serving me faithfully through college, and I was relying on public transportation and rides from friends to get to work, which added hours to my commute each day. Grandpa had always been generous with his money. He had done well for himself as the owner of a successful construction company, which he had sold for a substantial sum when he retired 10 years ago. He helped my brother with the down payment on his house, paid for Cousin Paige's braces when Aunt Betsy and Uncle Greg were going through financial difficulties, and set up college funds for all his grandchildren. My mother, on the other hand, had always been careful with money to the point of being controlling. She insisted on being involved in all my financial decisions, from opening my first bank account to co-signing my apartment lease. Even in my mid-20s, she would ask to see my budget and offer unsolicited advice on how I should be saving more. While I appreciated her concern, her constant monitoring often felt suffocating. When I mentioned my car troubles during Sunday dinner at my parents' house 3 months before the BBQ, Grandpa immediately offered to help. "You need reliable transportation to get to work, sweetie," he said. "I want to help you get a new car. Nothing too fancy, but something safe and dependable." My heart soared at his offer. A new car would transform my life, cutting my commute time in half and giving me the freedom to apply for better jobs in neighboring counties. I could see myself behind the wheel of a modest but reliable sedan, no longer having to plan my life around bus schedules or impose on friends for rides. The following weekend, Grandpa took me to several dealerships. We spent the entire day test driving different models, comparing features and discussing fuel efficiency. He was patient and supportive, never rushing me or pushing me toward a more expensive option. By the end of the day, we had narrowed it down to a practical, fuel-efficient Mazda that was within the budget he had set. "This car will serve you well," Grandpa said as we stood in the parking lot, his hand resting on my shoulder. "It has good safety ratings, decent gas mileage, and enough trunk space for all your camping gear." He remembered my love for weekend hiking trips, a detail that made my heart swell with affection. For me, this car represented more than just transportation. It symbolized independence, adult responsibility, and the next chapter of my life. With reliable transportation, I could finally start building the career and life I had been working toward. It was a stepping stone to financial stability and personal freedom. Looking back, I should have noticed the tight smile on my mother's face when Grandpa and I excitedly shared the details of our car shopping adventure during the family dinner that evening. I should have paid more attention to the way she changed the subject whenever Grandpa mentioned finalizing the purchase. But I was too caught up in my excitement and gratitude to see the warning signs that would later become so obvious. The morning after our car shopping expedition, Grandpa called to tell me he had thought about it overnight and wanted to increase his budget slightly so I could get the mid-range model with additional safety features and the extended warranty. It will cost a bit more up front, but save you money in the long run, he explained. I want you to have peace of mind when you are driving. When I shared this news with my mother, her reaction surprised me. Instead of sharing my excitement, she frowned and expressed concerns about insurance costs, maintenance expenses, and how accepting such an expensive gift might create expectations from Grandpa. You know how he can be, she said. If he buys you this car, he might think he has a say in your life decisions. That evening, she sat me down for a private conversation at the kitchen table after my father had gone to bed. Listen, Cassie, she said, using the childhood nickname I had outgrown years ago. I think it would be better if I handle the arrangements with your grandfather. What do you mean? I asked, confused by her suggestion. Well, you know your grandfather is getting older, and these financial transactions can be complicated, she explained. I think it would be easier for everyone if he transfers the money to our account, and then your father and I can help you with the purchase. We can make sure everything is done properly. I hesitated, feeling uneasy about this arrangement. But Grandpa and I already picked out the car. He seems to have everything under control. Mother reached across the table and patted my hand. Trust me, honey, this is the adult way to handle things. Your grandfather will feel better knowing we are involved, and it will protect everyone's interests. She went on to explain that they would set up a special account for the car funds and that they could potentially get a better deal through Dad's company discount program. She also suggested that having the car in my parents' name initially might save on insurance premiums. Once everything is settled, we will transfer the title to you, she promised. Against my better judgment, I agreed to her plan. After all, she was my mother, and financial matters had always been her domain in our family. I called Grandpa the next day and explained that my parents wanted to help with the car purchase. He seemed slightly disappointed, but ultimately supportive. Whatever makes the process easier for you, sweetheart, he said. I just want you to have a reliable car. A week later, Grandpa transferred $22,000 to my parents' account. The amount was generous enough to cover the Mazda we had selected plus tax title and the extended warranty he had insisted on. My mother showed me the bank transfer confirmation, and I felt a wave of gratitude toward my grandfather. Make sure you call him and thank him properly, she reminded me. I did call him, of course, expressing my heartfelt thanks for his generosity. I cannot wait to drive my new car to your house and show you, I told him. You have no idea how much this means to me. Just seeing you happy is thanks enough, he replied. Your grandmother would be so proud of the young woman you have become. The car purchase, however, did not proceed as quickly as I had anticipated. First, Mother said they needed to research more models to make sure we were getting the best value. Then there was an issue with the dealership financing department that needed to be resolved. Next, she claimed the particular model we wanted was out of stock and needed to be ordered. Each excuse seemed reasonable on its own, but together they created a pattern of delay that stretched from days into weeks. Finally, about a month after Grandpa had transferred the money, my mother called me at work. Good news, she announced. We found the perfect car for you. It is not exactly the model you and Grandpa looked at, but it is much more practical. That evening, my parents presented me with a 5-year-old Toyota with 60,000 miles on the odometer. It was clean and appeared to be in good condition, but it was clearly not the new Mazda that Grandpa and I had selected. When I expressed my confusion, my mother quickly explained that they had done extensive research and determined that buying a slightly used car was a much better financial decision. This way you avoid the immediate depreciation that happens when you drive a new car off the lot, she said. and we were able to save some money that you can use for insurance and maintenance. I was disappointed but tried to be grateful. After all, having a functional car was better than no car at all, and I trusted that my parents had made this decision with my best interests in mind. When I asked about the remaining money from Grandpa's gift, my mother explained that they had set it aside in a special account for future car-related expenses. "We will help you manage it," she said. "This way you will not have to worry about unexpected repair bills or insurance deductibles." The car was registered in my mother's name, which she explained was temporary until the loan was fully processed. "Just a formality," she assured me. "We will transfer it to your name soon." As the weeks passed, small inconsistencies in my mother's story began to emerge. When I mentioned needing the title to get a parking permit for my apartment complex, she changed the subject. When I asked about the special account holding the remaining car money, she was vague about the details. And when I suggested that we should invite Grandpa over to see my new car, she quickly discouraged the idea. "He is very busy with his garden club this month," she said. "Let us wait until things settle down." The first major red flag appeared when I received a registration renewal notice in the mail addressed to my mother. Upon closer inspection, I realized that the car had actually been purchased almost 6 months earlier, long before Grandpa had given the money for my new car. It appeared that my parents had simply transferred their second car to me rather than purchasing a new vehicle as Grandpa had intended. My suspicions grew stronger when I overheard my mother on the phone with a travel agent discussing details for a luxury cruise to Alaska that she and my father were planning. "Yes, the deluxe balcony suite would be perfect," she said. "And please add the premium beverage package and shore excursions." I knew my parents had been talking about taking an Alaskan cruise for years, but had always said it was too expensive. The timing of this sudden splurge, just weeks after receiving a substantial sum from Grandpa, seemed far too coincidental. My suspicions turned into concrete evidence one afternoon when I stopped by my parents' house to pick up mail that had been delivered to their address. No one was home, but I had a key for emergencies. As I collected the envelopes from the kitchen counter, I noticed my mother's laptop was open with her bank account page displayed on the screen. I had never snooped through my parents' private information before, and I felt a twinge of guilt as I moved closer to the screen. But my concern about the car situation overrode my moral qualms. What I saw confirmed my worst fears. There, in black and white, was a record of the $22,000 deposit from Grandpa, followed by a series of transactions that had nothing to do with purchasing a car for me. $9,000 had been transferred to a travel agency with the reference Alaska Cruise Deposit. $4,000 had gone to American Express to pay off a credit card balance. The remaining money had been dispersed across various expenses: new patio furniture, a weekend spa getaway for my mother and her friends, and a golf club membership for my father. Only $7,000 had been used for anything car-related, and that appeared to be paying off the remaining balance on the Toyota that my parents had already owned and simply transferred to me. The car that was still in my mother's name, not mine. I felt physically ill as I stared at the screen, the evidence of my mother's deception laid bare before me. This was not a misunderstanding or a different approach to managing the gift. This was a deliberate misappropriation of funds that my grandfather had specifically intended for me to have a new, reliable car. I confronted my mother that evening when she returned home. I tried to remain calm as I asked her directly about the bank transactions I had seen. "Were you snooping through my private accounts?" she demanded, her face flushing with anger. "That is a complete invasion of privacy, Cassandra." "I was not snooping," I defended myself. "Your laptop was open on the kitchen counter. But that is not the point. The point is that Grandpa gave you that money to buy me a new car, not for a cruise to Alaska or golf club membership." After several minutes of denial and deflection, my mother finally admitted to using the money for other purposes. "We did get you a car, did we not?" she said defensively. "And a perfectly good one at that. The rest of the money is being put to good use for the whole family." "But that is not what Grandpa intended," I insisted. "He wanted me to have a new car, the one we picked out together. He would be heartbroken if he knew what you did with his gift." My mother's expression hardened. "Your grandfather does not need to know the details," she said. "He wanted you to have reliable transportation, and now you do. Everyone is happy. Why rock the boat?" When I suggested that we should come clean to Grandpa and make things right, my mother became emotional, alternating between tears and anger. "After everything your father and I have done for you," she said, "I cannot believe you would even consider betraying us like that. We are your parents. We know what is best." Over the next few weeks, whenever I tried to revisit the subject, my mother would either change the topic or gaslight me into questioning my own understanding of the situation. "You are exaggerating," she would say. "We never promised it would be a brand new car." Or Grandpa left the details up to us. "He trusts our judgment." Or even, "You should be grateful for what you have instead of being so entitled." After several frustrating conversations that went nowhere, I realized that my mother would never admit to the full extent of her deception or take responsibility for her actions. If I wanted to expose the truth, I would need irrefutable evidence that even she could not deny or explain away. The opportunity came during a Sunday dinner at my parents' house, where the topic of my car coincidentally came up. My father mentioned something about Cassie's new car working out well, and my mother launched into an elaborate story about how they had helped me make a sensible choice with Grandpa's generous gift. Anticipating this kind of conversation, I had come prepared. My phone was in my pocket, recording the entire dinner conversation. As my mother spun her web of half-truths and outright lies, I felt a strange sense of calm, knowing that I was finally gathering the evidence I needed. "We put some of the money aside for Cassie's future car expenses," my mother explained to my father, unaware that her words were being preserved digitally. "We wanted to be responsible with Joe's gift." "And what about the cruise deposit?" I asked innocently. "Was that also part of being responsible with Grandpa's gift?" My mother's face paled momentarily before she recovered. "That has nothing to do with your car money," she said firmly. "Those are completely separate funds." "So the $9,000 transferred to Arctic Cruise Lines 3 days after Grandpa's money arrived in your account was just a coincidence," I pressed. "Are you still on about that?" she snapped. "I told you you misread the bank statement. Besides, what your father and I do with our money is none of your business." "It is not your money, though," I said quietly. "It was Grandpa's gift to me for a specific purpose." "We used it for that purpose," she exclaimed, her voice rising. "You have a car, do you not? A perfectly good, reliable car that meets all your needs. The rest of the discussion is closed, Cassandra. I will not have you accusing me of theft in my own home." That recording became the first of several I would make over the following weeks. Each one captured my mother's contradictory explanations, her gradual admissions when cornered with facts, and ultimately her justification that, as my parent, she had the right to decide how the gift should be allocated. "I have sacrificed everything for you kids," she said in one particularly revealing recording. "If I want to take a nice vacation after 27 years of putting everyone else first, I think I have earned it. Your grandfather can afford it, and he would understand even if you do not." As the annual family BBQ approached, I knew it would be my opportunity to finally bring the truth to light. With the recordings securely stored on my phone, I prepared myself for a confrontation that would forever change our family dynamics. The morning of Grandpa's annual 4th of July, BBQ arrived with a perfect blue sky and a knot of anxiety in my stomach. I dressed carefully in a casual sundress, applied minimal makeup, and spent extra time straightening my hair, not because I cared about my appearance that day, but because each of these routine actions gave me time to rehearse what I might say and how I might respond to the inevitable fallout. I drove to Grandpa's house in the used Toyota that had become a constant reminder of my mother's deception. As I pulled into the long gravel driveway, I could see that the celebration was already in full swing. American flags fluttered from every possible surface, red, white, and blue balloons bobbed in the gentle breeze, and the picnic tables were covered with patriotic tablecloths. The smell of barbecue filled the air, making my stomach growl despite my nervousness. My cousin Emma waved enthusiastically as I parked next to her Jeep. "Cassie, you made it," she called out. "Grandpa was just asking when you would arrive." I forced a smile and waved back, trying to appear normal even as my heart raced. The weight of my phone in my purse felt like a ticking bomb. Inside were the recordings that could destroy the carefully maintained image my mother had created within our family, the evidence of her betrayal, not just of me, but of Grandpa's trust and generosity. "Is everyone here already?" I asked, scanning the backyard as I approached. "Pretty much," Emma replied. "Your parents got here about an hour ago. Your mom is helping Aunt Patty with the potato salad, and your dad is manning the second grill with Uncle Greg." I nodded, simultaneously relieved and disappointed that my parents had arrived before me. Part of me had hoped to speak with Grandpa alone before the confrontation, but another part was grateful for the buffer of a crowd. The next hour passed in a blur of hugs, small talk, and forced laughter. I moved through the gathering like an actress, playing the role of casual Cassandra having a great time, all while hyper-aware of my mother's location and movements. She seemed to be deliberately keeping herself busy with food preparation and conversations with various relatives, strategically placing herself wherever Grandpa was not. I noticed her watching me from across the yard several times, her eyes narrowing whenever I drifted too close to where Grandpa was flipping burgers on the main grill. Once, when I approached him with a cold beer, she suddenly appeared at my side, linking her arm through mine and steering me toward a group of cousins. "Let your grandfather focus on the cooking," she said lightly, though her grip on my arm was tight enough to leave marks. "You know how seriously he takes his grilling duties." Throughout the afternoon, I observed her carefully curated performance. To the rest of the family, she was Karen, the devoted daughter-in-law, helping her father-in-law host his beloved annual event. Karen, the loving mother, proudly updating relatives on my recent promotion at work. Karen, the gracious wife, laughing at my father's corny jokes and touching his arm affectionately. No one would suspect that this same woman had misappropriated thousands of dollars meant for her daughter money, given by the very man whose praise she so eagerly sought today. As the afternoon wore on, I found myself engaged in conversation with Grandpa near the dessert table. He had just finished telling me about his plans to expand his vegetable garden when he asked the question I had been simultaneously dreading and waiting for. "So how is that new car treating you, Cassie?" he asked, his eyes crinkling with genuine interest. "I have been meaning to ask you about it. Is it everything you hoped for? Did you get all those safety features we talked about?" I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came out. My throat constricted as I looked into his kind face, seeing the pride and love there. How could I tell him the truth without hurting him? How could I not tell him the truth and allow my mother's deception to stand? Before I could formulate a response, my mother materialized beside us, a plate of brownies in her hands and a bright smile on her face. She must have been monitoring our conversation from across the yard, waiting for this exact moment. "Oh, she absolutely loves the car, Dad," she said smoothly, answering for me. "It has been such a blessing for her. Just the other day, she was telling us how much she appreciates your generosity. The fuel efficiency is amazing, and the safety features give us all such peace of mind." Grandpa turned his attention to her, seeming pleased by this report. "That is wonderful to hear. I knew that middle trim level with the extra safety package was the way to go. Smart investment." My mother nodded enthusiastically. "Absolutely. And setting aside some of the funds for future maintenance was such a smart idea. We wanted to make sure your gift provided long-term security for Cassie." I stood frozen, listening to my mother spin an elaborate lie about a car that did not exist, at least not in my possession. She described features that my Toyota did not have, maintenance plans that had never been established, and a financial arrangement that bore no resemblance to what had actually happened to Grandpa's money. As she spoke, Grandpa nodded approvingly, completely taken in by her performance. My chest tightened with anger and grief. This was the moment I had been preparing for, the perfect opportunity to expose the truth. My hand moved to my purse, fingers brushing against my phone. I looked at my mother, who was now describing a non-existent low interest rate on a non-existent car loan. I looked at Grandpa, whose face shone with satisfaction at having helped his granddaughter. I looked across the yard at my father, who was laughing with my uncles, oblivious to the drama unfolding by the dessert table. In that moment, I had to make a decision. I could remain silent and preserve the peace of this family gathering, protecting Grandpa from the pain of knowing he had been deceived. Or I could speak the truth regardless of the consequences. The weight of the recordings on my phone seemed to pull me toward the latter option. This was not just about the car anymore. It was about honesty, respect, and the true meaning of family. It was about standing up for myself and refusing to be complicit in my mother's manipulation. My mother finished her elaborate fiction with a flourish, patting Grandpa's arm affectionately. "Cassie is so thankful, are you not, sweetheart?" she said, turning to me with a warning in her eyes. Grandpa looked at me expectantly, waiting for my confirmation. "Well, are you enjoying the car, Cassie?" he asked again. "Was it worth all that research we did?" The yard seemed to fall silent around us, though I knew that was just my imagination. The other conversations continued. The children still played on the lawn, the music still played from the outdoor speakers. But in my world, there was only this moment of decision. My hand closed around my phone. "Actually, Grandpa," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Despite my racing heart, I would like to talk to you about the car." My mother's smile froze on her face, her eyes widening slightly in alarm. "Cassie, this is hardly the time for boring car talk," she interjected quickly. "Why don't we get Grandpa another drink instead? His glass is empty." Grandpa waved away her concern. "Nonsense, Karen. I want to hear what Cassandra has to say about her car. After all, I picked it out with her." I took a deep breath and pulled my phone from my purse. "The car you and I picked out, the new Mazda with all the safety features. I never got that car, Grandpa." His bushy eyebrows drew together in confusion. "What do you mean you never got it, but your mother just said—" "I know what she said," I interrupted gently. "And that is why I need to play something for you." My mother lunged forward, reaching for my phone. "Cassandra Marie, put that away right now. This is completely inappropriate." I stepped back, keeping the phone out of her reach. "No, Mom. What is inappropriate is lying to Grandpa about how his gift was used." By now, our exchange had attracted attention. My father approached from the grill area, looking concerned. Aunt Patty and Uncle Greg paused their conversation nearby, watching with curious expressions. My brother Tyler appeared at Grandpa's side, placing a protective hand on his shoulder. "What is going on?" my father asked, looking between my mother and me. "Nothing that cannot wait until we get home," my mother said tersely. "Cassandra is choosing to make a scene at a family gathering, which is both selfish and disrespectful." "I am not trying to make a scene," I said. "I am just trying to tell the truth. Grandpa deserves to know what really happened to the money he gave for my car." Grandpa's expression turned serious. "Joe, Karen, Cassandra, perhaps we should continue this conversation inside," he suggested, gesturing toward the house. But I knew if we moved to a private setting, my mother would find a way to control the narrative. This had to happen now with witnesses, or it might never happen at all. "I would prefer to do this here," I said firmly. "I am tired of secrets and lies." Without waiting for further objections, I pressed play on the recording. My mother's voice filled the suddenly quiet space around us. "Of course, we did not spend all $22,000 on her car," the recorded voice said clearly. "That would have been wasteful. We found her a perfectly good used Toyota for $7,000. The rest of the money is ours to allocate as we see fit. Joe gave it to us, not to her directly." My father's voice followed. "But he specifically said it was for a new car for Cassie with those safety features they researched together." "What he does not know won't hurt him," my mother's recording continued. "He just wants Cassie to have reliable transportation, which she now has. The details do not matter. Besides, we deserve a nice vacation after all these years, and you wanted that golf membership, did you not?" I stopped the recording and looked up. My mother's face had drained of all color. My father looked stunned and embarrassed. Grandpa's expression was unreadable, his lips pressed into a thin line. "That is not the whole story," my mother said quickly, her voice high and strained. "That recording is taken out of context. We did what we thought was best for Cassandra." "By spending $15,000 of my gift on yourselves?" Grandpa asked quietly. The disappointment in his voice cut through the tension like a knife. "No, that is not how it was," my mother insisted. "We were being practical. New cars lose value the minute you drive them off the lot. We made a financially responsible decision and set aside the rest of the money for Cassie's future needs." I pulled up the bank statement screenshots on my phone and handed it to Grandpa. "The money was not set aside for me," I said gently. $9,000 went to a cruise deposit, $4,000 paid off a credit card. The rest went to patio furniture, a spa weekend, and Dad's golf club membership. As Grandpa scrolled through the evidence, my mother's defense crumbled. She turned to my father for support, but he stepped back, shaking his head slightly. "Karen, tell me this is not true," Grandpa said, looking up from the phone. His voice was not angry, just deeply hurt, which somehow made it worse. My mother's response was to burst into tears. "You do not understand the financial pressure we have been under," she sobbed. "We have given everything to our children, sacrificed our own needs and wants for years. Is it so wrong that we wanted something for ourselves for once?" "It is wrong when you take money that was specifically given for your daughter, Grandpa," replied firmly. It is wrong when you lie to me about it. And it is especially wrong when you make Cassandra complicit in your deception by pressuring her to keep quiet. The family members who had gathered around us during this exchange now shifted uncomfortably. Aunt Patty put her arm around my mother's shoulders, though her expression suggested she was not entirely sympathetic. Uncle Greg cleared his throat and muttered something about giving us privacy, herding curious cousins away from the scene. My brother Tyler looked at me with a mixture of shock and newfound respect. Is that why you have been driving Mom's old Toyota? He asked. I thought you chose that model yourself. I nodded, feeling both vindicated and terrible. This was the truth I had wanted to expose, but seeing the pain on Grandpa's face and the humiliation on my father's made me question whether it had been worth it. Grandpa handed the phone back to me and stood up straighter, suddenly looking every one of his 74 years. Karen, David, I would like to speak with you privately, he said, his voice devoid of its usual warmth. Cassandra, thank you for your honesty, difficult as it must have been. As the three of them walked toward the house, the BBQ continued around us in subdued fashion. Relatives pretended to be engrossed in their food or conversations, but I could feel their sideways glances and whispered discussions. I had effectively ended the celebratory atmosphere of the gathering. My cousin Emma approached cautiously, offering a plastic cup of lemonade. That took guts, she said quietly. Are you okay? I was not okay. My hands were shaking and my stomach churned with a mixture of relief and regret. I do not know, I answered honestly. I just could not let the lie continue. The next hour was excruciating. I sat alone at a picnic table near the edge of the property watching as various relatives departed earlier than usual, making excuses about other commitments. My parents and Grandpa remained inside the house, their discussion hidden from view, but not from imagination. Finally, my father emerged alone, his face grim. He walked directly to his car without speaking to anyone, started the engine and drove away. My mother followed about 10 minutes later, her eyes red and swollen from crying. She too left without a word, not even looking in my direction. As the gathering continued to disperse, I debated whether to go inside and check on Grandpa or to leave him in peace. The decision was made for me when he appeared on the back porch, looking tired but composed. He beckoned me over with a wave of his hand. When I reached him, he surprised me by pulling me into a tight hug. I am sorry, Grandpa, I whispered against his shoulder. I did not want to ruin your BBQ. He released me and looked into my eyes. You did not ruin anything, Cassie. You were brave enough to tell the truth, which is more than can be said for your parents. What happens now? I asked, dreading the answer. Grandpa sighed heavily. That remains to be seen. But one thing is certain, I will be buying you that new car we picked out, and this time I will handle the purchase myself. I drove home alone that evening, knowing that I had done the right thing but uncertain about the cost. The family I returned to would not be the same one I had grown up with. The truth had been revealed, but the revelation had shattered something that might never be fully repaired. The week following the BBQ was marked by a deafening silence from my family. My phone remained unnervingly quiet, with no calls or texts from either of my parents. Social media offered no clues about their state of mind, as neither of them had posted anything since the confrontation. Even my brother Tyler, who had initially seemed supportive of my decision to speak up, had gone radio silent after a brief text the morning after the BBQ. Things are intense at home, giving Mom and Dad space. The silence was both a relief and a torment. I was grateful for the reprieve from my mother's manipulations and guilt trips, but the absence of communication left me wondering what narratives were being constructed about me in my absence. Was I being painted as the ungrateful daughter who had humiliated her parents publicly? The troublemaker who had disrupted a beloved family tradition? The naive girl who did not understand the complexities of adult financial decisions? My suspicions were confirmed when my cousin Emma called me on Wednesday evening. Just thought you should know, she said hesitantly. Aunt Karen has been calling around to the family. She is telling everyone that you misunderstood the whole situation and blew it out of proportion because you were upset about not getting a brand new car. I sighed, unsurprised but still disappointed. Is anyone believing her? Some are, Emma admitted, but others have questions. The way you played that recording and showed those bank statements, it was pretty clear something shady happened. Uncle Greg told my mom he always suspected Aunt Karen had expensive tastes that did not match their income. This pattern continued over the next few days. I received a handful of text messages from relatives, some expressing support, others suggesting I should apologize to my parents for the public confrontation. My mother's sister, Aunt Melissa, called to tell me she was disappointed in my behavior and reminded me that family matters should stay private. My father's brother, Uncle Paul, on the other hand, sent a brief but supportive email. Standing up for what is right is never easy. Proud of you, kiddo. 10 days after the BBQ, my father finally reached out. His text was simple and direct. Can we meet for coffee tomorrow? Just you and me. We met at a quiet cafe halfway between our houses. My father looked tired with new lines around his eyes and mouth that had not been there before. He ordered a black coffee and sat across from me, his hands clasped tightly on the table. I owe you an apology, he began, surprising me. I knew what your mother was doing with that money was wrong. I benefited from it with that golf membership, but I told myself it was okay because you still got a car. I was weak, and I am sorry. His honesty disarmed me. I had prepared for defensiveness for attempts to justify or minimize what had happened. Instead, I was faced with genuine remorse. Why did you let it happen? I asked the question that had been burning in my mind for months. My father sighed heavily. It is complicated. Your mother has always been particular about money. She manages our finances, makes the decisions about spending. Over the years, it was just easier to go along with what she wanted than to challenge her. He paused, looking down at his coffee. That is not an excuse, just the reality I have accepted for too long. And now I prompted. Now things are different, he said. Your grandfather was furious, rightfully so. He has demanded that we repay the entire amount. We are selling the cruise tickets and returning other purchases. Your mother is not handling it well. I could imagine. My mother had always been resistant to admitting wrongdoing of any kind. Being forced to make financial restitution must be excruciating for her. Is that why she has not contacted me? I asked. My father nodded. Partly. She is also deeply embarrassed. The family knows now, and your mother has always cared intensely about how others perceive her. But mainly she is angry. She believes you betrayed her by exposing this to the family. She betrayed Grandpa's trust, I pointed out, and mine. I know, my father said quietly. I have tried to explain that to her, but she is not ready to hear it yet. Give her time. Time, however, did not seem to improve matters with my mother. 2 weeks passed, then 3, with no direct communication from her. Through my father and brother, I learned that she was continuing to justify her actions to anyone who would listen, portraying herself as the victim of ungrateful family members who did not appreciate her sacrifices. Meanwhile, true to his word, Grandpa had taken matters into his own hands regarding the car. 3 weeks after the BBQ, he called and asked me to meet him at the Mazda dealership, where we had first test-driven cars together. No middlemen this time, he said cheerfully when I arrived. Just you and me and a salesperson who works on commission. By the end of the day, I was the owner of a brand new Mazda with all the safety features we had originally discussed, plus a few upgrades Grandpa had insisted on. The paperwork was in my name, only the financing handled directly through the dealership and the keys handed directly to me. As we stood in the parking lot beside my gleaming new car, Grandpa pulled me into a hug. I am proud of you, he said. It takes courage to stand up for the truth, especially when it would be easier to stay silent. I almost did stay silent, I admitted. I was afraid of hurting you. The truth might sting temporarily, he replied, but lies poison relationships permanently. I am glad you trusted me enough to be honest. The new car was a tangible symbol of rectified wrongdoing, but it did not resolve the fractures in my family. My mother still refused to speak to me directly, sending my brother or father as messengers when necessary. Holiday plans became a logistical nightmare with relatives trying to determine how to accommodate both my mother and me without forcing an uncomfortable reunion. Thanksgiving was particularly challenging. Traditionally held at my parents' house, the family gathering was relocated to Aunt Patty's home this year, a neutral territory. My mother arrived late and left early, ensuring minimal overlap with my presence. The few times our eyes met across the room, her gaze was cold and accusatory. She will come around eventually, my father assured me as he walked me to my car that evening. She just needs more time. What if she does not? I asked, voicing the fear that had been growing in me. What if this is permanent? My father squeezed my shoulder. Family is complicated, but it is also resilient. This is a difficult chapter, not the end of the story. I wanted to believe him, but as Christmas approached with no thaw in my mother's attitude, it became increasingly difficult to maintain hope for reconciliation. The holiday season, once my favorite time of year now, loomed as a series of awkward gatherings and strained conversations. The unexpected breakthrough came from an unlikely source. In mid-December, Grandpa was diagnosed with atrial fibrillation, a heart condition that required medication and monitoring, but was not immediately life-threatening. The health scare, however, seemed to shift something in my mother's perspective. She appeared at my apartment unannounced one evening, looking uncharacteristically uncertain as she stood in my doorway. "Your father told me about Joe's heart condition," she said stiffly. "I thought you might want to talk about it." It was a small olive branch clumsily extended, but it was more than she had offered in months. I invited her in, made coffee, and we sat at my kitchen table discussing Grandpa's prognosis and treatment plan with careful politeness. As she was preparing to leave, my mother paused by the door. "The car looks nice," she said, nodding toward the parking lot where my Mazda was visible. "The blue color suits you." It was not an apology. It was not even an acknowledgement of wrongdoing. But it was a step, however, tentative towards something that might eventually resemble reconciliation. 6 months after the fateful BBQ, our family landscape had shifted into a new configuration. The initial earthquake of confrontation had settled, leaving behind a changed terrain that we were all still learning to navigate. Some relationships had weakened, others had surprisingly strengthened, and new boundaries had been established that altered how we interacted with one another. My relationship with my mother remained complicated. We had progressed from complete estrangement to a careful civility, meeting occasionally for lunch or coffee in public places where the presence of strangers helped maintain our politeness. Our conversations remained superficial, touching on work weather and general family news without venturing into the deeper waters of trust and betrayal that still lay between us. "I know you think I did something terrible," she said during one such lunch, the closest she had come to addressing the car incident directly. "But I have always tried to do what I thought was best for this family." "I know you believe that, Mom," I replied carefully. "But good intentions do not excuse dishonesty. Grandpa trusted you with that money for a specific purpose." She pursed her lips but did not argue. Progress of a sort. The boundaries I had established with both my parents were clear and non-negotiable. I would no longer allow them any involvement in my financial decisions. I declined their offers to help with my taxes, rejected suggestions about my retirement planning, and firmly shut down conversations about my spending habits. These boundaries, while initially met with resistance, were gradually accepted as the new normal. My father had made greater efforts toward reconciliation than my mother. He called regularly, took an interest in my work and hobbies, and made a point of spending one-on-one time with me at least twice a month. During one of our dinners together, he confessed that the car incident had prompted him to examine other aspects of his marriage. "I have spent 30 years letting your mother make all the decisions, financial and otherwise," he said. "It was easier that way, but it was not necessarily healthier. We are in counseling now, trying to find better balance." This was a surprising development, but a welcome one. Whether it would lead to lasting change in their relationship remained to be seen, but the effort itself suggested possibilities for growth that I had not previously considered. My relationship with Grandpa, already close, had deepened through our shared experience. His health scare had been a reminder of his mortality, prompting me to prioritize our time together. Every Sunday afternoon was now reserved for visiting him, helping with projects around his house, or simply sitting on his porch sharing stories in silence. "You know, Cassie," he said during one such visit, "what happened with the car money was unfortunate but perhaps necessary. It brought some truths to light that had been hidden for too long." I nodded, understanding what he meant. The painful revelation had exposed not just the specific deception about the car money, but patterns of control, dishonesty, and enabling that had characterized my family dynamics for years. "Still," he continued, "forgiveness is important, even when it is difficult, not for their sake, but for yours. Carrying anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die." "I am working on it," I assured him. But forgiveness does not mean forgetting or allowing the same patterns to continue. Exactly right, he agreed, patting my hand. Forgiveness without boundaries is just permission. Beyond my immediate family, I had been surprised by the support network that emerged following the BBQ confrontation. Cousins I had never been particularly close to reached out with messages of solidarity. My brother Tyler, after an initial period of neutrality, had become an unexpected ally, standing up to our mother when she attempted to disparage me in his presence. Most surprisingly, I had formed new friendships that filled some of the emotional gaps left by the strain in my family relationships. My neighbor Jasmine, a cheerful graphic designer who had moved in across the hall just before the BBQ incident, had become a close confidant after finding me crying in the stairwell one evening. My coworker, Marcus, upon noticing my subdued mood at work, had invited me to join his trivia team, introducing me to a group of kind, funny people who quickly became a regular part of my life. These new connections did not replace family, but they provided alternative sources of support and belonging during a time when family gatherings were still fraught with tension. They reminded me that community could be found in unexpected places and that chosen family could be just as nurturing as biological ties. The therapeutic journey I undertook after the BBQ confrontation had been challenging but transformative. My therapist, Dr. Lydia, had helped me examine not just the recent betrayal but the lifetime of subtle manipulations and boundary violations that had preceded it. What your mother did with the car money was not an isolated incident, Dr. Lydia pointed out during one session. It was an extreme example of patterns that were already established in your relationship with her. The question now is, how do you want to redefine that relationship going forward? It was a question I was still answering, one conversation, one boundary, one decision at a time. The work was ongoing, but I was committed to creating healthier patterns in all my relationships, including the one with myself. Perhaps the most significant change in the 6 months since the BBQ was my relationship with truth and authenticity. I had always considered myself an honest person, but I had also been someone who avoided conflict, who acquiesced to keep the peace, who sometimes allowed lies of omission to stand unchallenged. No longer. The experience of speaking truth to power, painful as it had been, had awakened something in me that could not be put back to sleep. I found myself being more direct in all my interactions, more willing to name uncomfortable realities, more committed to living in alignment with my values, even when it created tension. This commitment to truth extended to my relationship with my grandfather as his health fluctuated. When he asked me directly about how things stood with my mother, I was honest rather than reassuring. When he expressed concern about his legacy and how the family would function after he was gone, I acknowledged the challenges rather than offering empty platitudes. I worry about what will happen to this family when I am not here to bring everyone together, he confessed during a quiet moment on his porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. We will find our way, I told him. It might not look the same as it did before, but we will create new traditions, new ways of being family. And we will carry your values forward, especially your commitment to truth and integrity. He smiled at that, seeming satisfied with my answer. That is all any of us can hope for, I suppose. To leave behind not just material things, but values that outlive us. As winter gave way to spring and spring blossomed into summer, the approaching anniversary of the BBQ confrontation loomed large in my mind. Grandpa had announced his intention to host the gathering again despite concerns about his health, and the entire family was navigating the complex emotions surrounding this milestone. Would my mother and I maintain our careful truce in that emotionally charged setting? Would the family have healed enough to celebrate together without the weight of last year's revelations hanging over us? Would the new boundaries and relationships forged in the aftermath of conflict withstand the pressure of tradition and expectation? These questions had no simple answers, but I approached them with a hard-won wisdom. Family love, I had learned, was not a guaranteed constant, but a living, changing entity that required honesty to thrive. Comfortable lies might seem easier in the moment, but they ultimately corroded the foundations of relationship. And sometimes the most loving act was not maintaining peace at all costs, but disrupting a harmful status quo to make room for something healthier to grow. The car that had been at the center of the conflict was now simply my reliable transportation, the drama surrounding it gradually fading into a significant but not defining chapter in our family story. What remained was the lesson it had taught me, that truth, while sometimes painful was the only solid ground on which to build a life of integrity and authentic connection. As I prepared for the upcoming barbecue, I carried this lesson with me like a compass guiding my interactions and decisions. Whatever challenges awaited, I would face them with honesty, courage, and the knowledge that true family bonds could withstand the light of truth. In fact, they could only grow stronger in its illumination. Have you ever had to confront a difficult truth in your family? How did you handle it, and what did you learn from the experience? Share your story in the comments below. If this video resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more real-life stories about family truth and personal growth. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, honest relationships might be more challenging, but they are infinitely more valuable than comfortable lies.